the battle stations.
Hello and welcome to Kahs-wan Reviews. Kahs-wan is a trial of survival that Vulcans go through, so I called the show that when it's a trial to review. That's also why we're in the desert here instead of the stars. I am anti-derivative Jill, and today I will be sharing some thoughts I had while watching last week's episode of Star Trek Patrick Stewart, Season 2, Episode 3, Assimilation. I normally wouldn't have this kind of show so late, but I wanted to go watch the Red Letter Media review, but I don't want that review to bleed into this one. So I'll go through my original thoughts, watching the episode for the first time here before I go do that. Plus, these episodes are so vapid that I'll be done pretty quickly. Before I get into that, I wanted to say hello to Darius in the chart, in the chat. He could also be in the chart too. Oh, and hello to Canadian Spider-Man. Hello, guys. I see y'all there. And there's my panel link in case anyone wanted to join. Hello, Darius. And hello, Spidey. Yes, red alert. It's a red alert because our franchise is under attack. I love food. Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, good morning, or rather, I should be asleep, but instead I'm doing a Star Trek Picard review because the next episode is tomorrow, and I'm gonna fall behind if I don't do it now. Star Trek Patrick Stewart. Yes, that's what I call it. Star Trek Patrick Stewart. That's what I have to call it because he's not Picard. Like, he's an android now. He's a synthetic human. He's not Picard. He wasn't Picard even when he was human in the first season. And Darius also says, I'm right, her, in the chart. Okay. So I also have some screenshots here of the show. So to sum up last week's episode called Penance, the characters were stuck in this dystopian fascist Earth with public executions, among other such things. They all play magically important roles as if Q set it up that way, but the writers aren't smart enough to blame that on Q. And I have a cat that wants to get in this room, and I'm afraid she's going to wake people up. Okay, never mind. The cat ran away. Hello. Never mind. I thought I wanted. Sorry, my cat was knocking at the door. I thought she wanted to come in, but then she ran away. So yeah. Patrick has to pay penance for what evil Picard did, or something. He has to pay penance for something, according to Q. And Seven was the president, and Rios led the war along with Picard. They were generals in the war. And a different Borg queen from season 1 is recruited to help, and she doesn't immediately assimilate everyone as soon as she can. They decide that this Borg queen can assist them in time travel via the slingshot method from Star Trek 4. Agnes and Raffi save the day with unknown CGI magic, and then Evil Seven's husband appears on the warehouse ship. So here we're back to oh wow, okay, that's the recap from the last episode. And here we're back on the lens ship warehouse ship, lens flare warehouse ship. And Annika's husband makes everyone drop their phasers. And oddly enough, we have the first episode where Picard doesn't begin it on the ground. Oh, there are those lens flares there. And there's Girardi doing her thing there. Yeah. Anyway, um, um, So, oddly enough, we have the first episode where Picard doesn't begin it on the ground or hunched over, but this time he's being held at phaser point, so I suppose that's still a position of vulnerability in some sense. And Annika's husband finally figures out that she and Picard are different and is making a grand speech about his revelation of this fact. He realizes they're not from his universe or something. He knows there's something wrong with them. Um, and given that gives Girardi enough time to do her thing here. She's what is she doing? She's hooking up the Borg Queen to the ship. And when Seven can't reveal his name, because he asks her, "Oh, what's my name?" Because you're supposed to be my wife, so she doesn't know. So he hits her. And the fight ensues where Seven, Rafi, and Rios kill the husband and his guards. And Elnor's wounds are deep, and they find some bandages for them. And here that's the fight there. There's he's like, "What's my name?" and she doesn't know, and they fight. Oh, and there's a shot of the kill. That's a kill shot right there. So when people die in this universe, they just turn into a bunch of red sparks. Yeah. So when I review episodes of Orville, I enjoy getting these shots of the ships, but not here. This thing is ugly. The Orville is a universe you want to explore, but in this universe, you're glad to be nowhere near it. The first few ships we saw in episode 1 are pretty much gone now for the season, I believe. But actually, to be honest, this scene alone, outside of not being Star Trek, for especially given all the killing, this scene could be the start of a good fluffy action popcorn movie. Um, if I'm being perfectly honest, and this is probably the highest praise I think I've given this particular season so far. The writers and production team have found their place in writing, really and really disgusting and disturbing, depressing content. So really, they would all be better off making that kind of show instead of trying to work on a franchise that's supposed to be optimistic. And my phone keeps going off. But that type of writing takes more talent than we have here. And oh no, that's Elnor's wound that he got, and they find a band-aid for it. And there's some of the evil not Federation, Confederation ships shooting at the warehouse ship. And there's Rafi putting a band-aid on. All right. And then Q suddenly appears to agree with me when he says, "This is the only kind of life you understand." But, of course, I'm not actually sure what he means by that in regards to the story, since everything he says is just a bunch of word salads, written cryptically enough that it could be interpreted 100 different ways. So it ends up signifying nothing. And hello in the chat to I Love Food, if I haven't said hi to you yet. And Canadian Spider-Man says, "Yay, caught you live, anti-derivative Jill. Nice kitty. Yeah, that cat is still at the door, actually. Lurking as I drift off. All right, Spidey, I hope you can have a good rest. Good night. Pleasant dreams." I Love Food says, "Firm handshakes to Canadian Spider-Man, Darius Munchausen, and Pleasant Valley Picker CA. Lol. Hi, Jill. Wish I could stay, but it's after 12:30 a.m. here. Got to get up in 8 hours, so I need my sleep. I wish I could stay. Oh well. Night." Since you are discussing Picard, I won't miss much. Night. Yeah, you really won't. And I won't really be taking very long either. Very tired. Night. Yes, good night. And sleep well, sweet dreams. Anyway, um, like I was saying, so far Q just gives us word salads. It's just not the Q I remember. Anyway, he looks good though. Too bad they couldn't give a actor of this caliber some better lines. And this show is just really dark and dreary. So Rafi continues to care for Elnor as Seven goes to help Rios on the bridge. Girardi is saying it's difficult to pull off time travel by slingshot through a solar flare, but we already know that's what she's doing. So she's adding nothing to the table there. It's repetitive. We know you're using the time travel method from Star Trek 4 already. The Borg Queen chamber falls over. Rios is actually giving commands to engage in battle. So sometimes I'm just shocked when the characters do something that makes sense. Oh, and this is here is that battle that he's actually engaging with in a logical way. And so I'm surprised when they do that correctly. However, the hologram control over his face still looks ridiculous, and that's exemplified when he loses control and he looks like this. Anyway, having been knocked over, the Borg Queen begins to crawl around and lifts up her body. So that's a. I guess it doesn't really match the images, but having fallen over, um, she lifts up her body to the ship that Girardi hooks her up to with her metal tentacles. She then begins the sequence needed to time travel and takes out the other, better looking evil starships. And hello in the chat too. Oh, Canadian Spider Man says to Pleasant Valley Picker, haha, good night. I have to get up at 5 for F6. Six. Damn you. Cool and fun people, haha. Not the cue we remember either, Jill. Um, Canadian Spider Man, my review won't be too long, but I understand if you gotta get to sleep. And hello in the chat to Thomas Potts. Until episode 4, episode 3 was the worst so far. Well, buckle up because I'm sure it can get much worse than this. And Darius says hi to Thomas Potts. And so, as it shows here, Rios is no longer in command. And we see the sun that they will be using for time travel. Rio seems confused, but that is because he's not listening to the Borg vaguely explain that she's initiating time travel. The ship blinks into a blinding light. And it seems the production only knows how to do weird warpy things to the images to make the science fantasy happen. I guess they also know how to make it rain sparks too. Oh yeah, weird warpy things. That's what I mean by that. Look at that. And then there's the raining of the sparks. Yes, time travel, Captain Marty Spock. Welcome. Time travel. Yes, the Canadian Spider says, go, Jill, go. And Thomas Spot says hello to Darius. And welcome, Captain Marty Spock. Captain Cockney Spock. Time travel, you say? Yes, they're using the time travel method from Star Trek 4, which we're just assuming because they don't take the same precise steps that is taken in that movie, but that's what they're claiming to be doing here. Canadian Spider-Man says, "Night, Thomas and Darius and Jill and Captain. Thanks. See you soon. I'll be listening." All right, good night, Canadian Spider-Man. So here are those sparkly sparks that they know how to make. They're warpy, blinky lights that they can do. And then the time travel begins to take shape in a wormhole filled with more bright lights. And then we don't travel with the ship through the wormhole like they usually do with this kind of thing. We just see the ship exit through the wormhole to another bright light. Now, one thing I do like is that the chronometer breaks, and they have to determine the error, the time that they're in through context clues, like the lack of a moon colony and the evidence of fossil fuel pollution. So they guess that they really did make it to the 21st century. Earth's gravity pulls the ship impossibly quickly, so the ship can hurry up and crash land as soon as possible. At least it will be good to see the ship destroyed. Or at least I thought so on the first viewing of this. That's what my thought process was. Picard takes the helm so he can crash the ship into his vineyard. So that kind of makes a little sense, I guess. That, they just happen to be exactly where his vineyard is. And this is really the picture of the ship going through the atmosphere. And this one here is of the ship crashing into wherever it's crashing. And Picard takes the helm to crash it there. And again, the ship is not destroyed. Power on the ship is gone though, so that's believable. And then we meet Raffi crying in sickbay to see if she can't get some power to Elnor's biobed, which has been the only thing sustaining him. He tries to assure her that he's strong enough to heal on his own, but then he coughs up green blood. And um, Picard makes a natural and logical conclusion that the Borg Queen is draining power from the ship, from the time travel. She okay. What he says is that the Borg Queen is drained from having done the time travel, so she's so out of power herself. She's lacking energy, so that she's sapping power from the ship for strength, and that kind of makes sense. So knowing this, Rios also makes a reasonable conclusion that they should disconnect her. And even better, Rios is about to just blast her. And that kind of makes me almost like him, but Picard stops him from doing this. Yeah, there he is. Rios is about to just take her out. Why not? But but that doesn't happen. Then Elnor asks for the medallion he got from the nuns he used to live with. And Darius in the chat says, "Hail to Captain Marty Spock. I feel like I just saw you in the future." And Thomas Potts says, "Good night, Canadian Spider-Man." And Captain Marty Spock says, "Hail, Darius Munchausen. Is this timeline B?" So this is that medallion he got from the nuns. He used to live with nuns. I don't know. It's a whole thing from season 1. So this thing gives him some comfort while he dies, because it looks like he's dead. So Picard takes the opportunity to try to be encouraging about fixing the timeline for everyone who's still alive. And Seven interrupts these empty platitudes just to shame Picard, saying he should have allowed Rios to kill the Borg Queen so that there could have been enough power for Elnor's biobed. But Picard counters that she is how they travel to the past, so he believes that she's their only link to the fissure created in time. I guess, but I'm sort of with Rafi here because really, that kind of thing, the computer could perform calculations needed for time travel. You don't need a specific person, I'm not sure. Uh, anyway, I'm sort of with her that they shouldn't be playing nurse to a Borg. They can find another way back to the future, I'm sure. If not the ship, something. They could figure something out. But had she just left that argument there, Rafi would be fine. That point would be taken. But she doesn't. She continues, and she becomes irrationally enraged due to her grief. Then she brings it back to the obvious points we already know. And despite some of the action in the first 2 minutes being almost entertaining, this is starting to become tedious and repetitive. Nothing of value. And this is increasingly becoming the days of our stars in space that revels in playing out only the conflict. If this were supposed to be a space fantasy opera, that would be fine, right? But because the writing in that regard is actually a little bit improved from season one. However, it has the Star Trek label on it, and everything here is explicitly against what the franchise is meant to be, which explains why I have to do these reviews to point out what is happening to Star Trek and, why Secret Hideout just isn't really doing a very good job. And it would be good if they just ended their contract with Paramount. Anyway, Raffi continues her tedious, emotionally driven dialogue that the time changed because of Q's intervention and that she wants to fix the time for the hope that it will bring Elnor back. She's basically accusing Picard of doing the same kind of mischief that Q does. And I'm finding it difficult to make it through all of this vapid misunderstanding of Federation history. So then Picard continues with the same dialogue we learned about from the last episode, referring to the Watcher, and the Queen told them there would be this Watcher that they find in LA. And now these are the story cues from the last episode. And Canadian Spider-Man says, "Thank you for doing these reviews, Jill. Kitty, kitty." Oh, can you hear the kitty? She's meowing in the background. Haha, I love Yes. Then we continue with a bit of contrived knowledge due to having it in the script rather than earning it through observation. And what I mean by this is that Raffi guesses that the Watcher is an alien using equipment that puts out a subspace signal they can detect. They could have avoided all of that false contrivance of Raffi having some sort of prophetic knowledge by having them allow the ship to explore via scans once it restored power. Then the ship would find a mysterious subspace signal leading them to the Watcher. But they have to have Raffi herself be the one to conjure a revelation out of nowhere, leaving the rest to flounder in her apparent brilliance, because that is how she is written. And that is how the writers try to force a character to be likable in an inorganic way. They they did this type of thing to Wesley Crusher too, lest anyone believe I'm being unfair. I didn't like it then either. At least Picard acknowledges it when he says that she's too emotional. Then Agnes goes on to explain why Rios can't take his phaser because they want to minimize any changes to the future they're heading towards, which is fine. Of course, just the act of being there will change the future in some way due to the butterfly effect. But it makes sense to try and minimize too many changes if you can help it. Other ways she mentions are to stay away from hospitals, security, and authorities, and this tells me this is exactly what's going to happen. She says they need to avoid any place with scanners that might find vaccination chips from the future, and so that's insinuating that people in the 24 people in the future have vaccination chips. And Um, so they're putting the conspiracy that Bill Gates is injecting people with chips in Star Trek, and I'm not really sure why. I don't have any clue why they included this dialogue. Anyway, I do like how there's some dialogue that acknowledges that a plan to wake up a Borg queen who can murder and assimilate everyone just for some potential information on finding this watcher is a stupid idea. They acknowledge it. They do in the episode, but they do it anyway. So the writing is only mildly self-aware. It doesn't take any attempt to fix the stupidity that it actually recognizes, but I'm surprised that Rio sees it too. So, that's just something that's nice that someone in the writer's room, there's a ton of writers on this show. There's at least one of them that's like, "This is kinda dumb," but the other one's like, "We're doing this anyway." So, he was allowed to put in it that it's dumb, or she. And, and so this is that this image here is of what they consider a tricorder, which looks like kinda like a smartphone that they squished in half, that they made able to close. But I don't even know if it can close, but I know it can be in that state. I don't know. I was beginning to wonder if they had brought any tricorders at all along. This is the first one I've seen. So she finds that the Borg is attempting communication, but she can't exit sleep mode. Picard makes a logical connection that when he was Locutus, they didn't speak aloud either. They shared their thoughts through the collective directly. So Girardi comes up with a way to connect her to something the Borg Queen can communicate with. Girardi is rerouting power from the environmental controls to try to get the Borg Queen out of safe mode. She decides she needs to become assimilated herself so she can enter the Borg Queen's mind and somehow repair it from there. Now, the canon behind this is that the Borg can repair their ships by thought, so I won't discount that they can repair each other by thought when they're assimilated as well. Now, now they're rerouting power from life support to the transporters, which they say with this current power supply they'll only be able to use once. But I don't see why they're wasting power on that when they can just disembark manually, especially considering that someone could see them and they were just talking about changing the future. But I guess that doesn't matter. And Darius Munchausen says, "Chaos, butterfly." And Captain Marty Spock says that they are lampshading the dumbness. Lampshading. Yes, they're acknowledging the dumbness, uh, but still carrying it out anyway. Exactly. Again, they gave Raffi the knowledge of where to go. She knows she knows they need to head to the Markridge Industrial Tower because it's the tallest in LA, so they can use it to scan for signals. But this deduction isn't as bad as the first one though, because it's logical to assume that um, detecting a signal will be easier from a higher vantage point. But I was getting bored, so I forgot to get any images of any of this, and that's why you've been seeing this same picture of a tricorder. So, but here I remembered to start doing that again. And Seven was contemplating in the mirror that she's never been physically assimilated, despite having the mind and memories of having been assimilated. I admit that's gotta be weird. Rafi gives Seven a device that Girardi can connect with to beam them back to the warehouse ship when they need, but she won't know when that will be. Because Rafi says they can't communicate with the ship due to the lack of a subspace relay. Then she explains how she's configured the tricorder to detect some kind of anomaly, but they fail to describe what any of that means. Because this whole scene is not about that. The scene is actually about her trying to finally get control of her emotions and stop crying and, get over her grief and, not about the science of the mission. So, Agnes is begging Picard to allow her to be assimilated so she can heal the Borg Queen. They've conjured some unexplained way for someone external to the collective to listen to the subconsciousness of Agnes as she's being assimilated. But these are my thoughts when I first watched. If they could do that, then why can't they do the same thing to tap into the subconsciousness of the queen so they can determine what her problem is and perform diagnostics that way? It's possible they can make the repair without even being assimilated, but they didn't even try something like that. There is no good answer for this except that the episode needed some drama on the ship, and here it is. Then the landing party is debriefed again on the need to cause as little change as possible in the 21st century. And so Captain Marty Spock says, change in the future, creating timeline B, they mean. Yeah, yes, correct. Well, hmm. And then he also says, oh, good, another vaguely defined anomaly popping up randomly on a tricorder. Well, don't worry, it never comes up again. I have no idea what. Actually, it's not the anomaly that pops up. It's like they're setting the tricorder to detect an anomaly, but if they don't know what that anomaly is, then how are they setting the tricorder to detect it? I I don't know. Trying to make sense of any of the show is just not a good idea. Darius Munchausen says, "There's an anomaly. What is it? I don't know. It's an anomaly. It's an anomaly." It's like they don't even know what they're writing. And so they're saying, don't make any changes. And the strangest part here is this scene. This is the worst part of this episode, I think, because even stranger is that Picard describes being assimilated as being euphoric, which is an adjective I don't recall ever being used by Picard regarding his experience with the collective ever. That makes it sound like it's, like it's drugs or something. Like being with the collective is, you know. I don't remember Picard ever having to be weaned off being Borg. I only remember that he had quiet PTSD that he overcame during a trip to visit his brother in the episode Family, who helped him face the truth of the horror that occurred to him. I remember it being described as Picard having lost control. He very much hated what happened to him, and that and and, and that he couldn't do anything about it. He hated that loss of control. Remember that single tear when he was assimilated in Best of Both Worlds? He was still in there, but he lost control. It was portrayed as the most awful thing to experience, akin to being dead, but now it's being called euphoric. I was just getting used to the fact that they've written a Borg queen whose disconnection from the hive was all it took to give her individualization. That was enough, but this is wild. So, this genocidal cyborg collective really just wants the galaxy to feel good. That is the message that I'm getting from Star Trek Patrick Stewart Season 2. And Nothing much here as they head to Markridge Tower, and Agnes voluntarily assimilates to repair the Borg Queen. And now we cut to the 21st century. But before we do that, Captain Marty Spock says, set settings to meta detection P. Yeah, that's good enough for me. Damn, she's even paler than she is. And Darius Munchausen says, these Marxist writers are trying to convince us that being in the collective is euphoric. Nice try. This is America. And Captain Marty Spock says, we are all individuals. And Canadian Spider-Man says, Captain, I went to GHQ Models and saw their fantastic World War II naval ships. My wish list currently sitting at around $900, and I haven't even got it into land or air vehicles. Thanks a lot. And Darius Munchausen says, Captain, I'm detecting a meta anomaly. Q appears. Bonjour, mon capitaine. Oh, I didn't catch that. You misspelled it. I read it correctly. Nice. Captain Marty Spock says, those ships sure are sweet. Canadian Spider-Man. Yes. I'm glad Canadian Spider-Man is finding some good ships, because you're not going to find them here on Star Trek Patrick Stewart. And so now we cut to the 21st century, complete with 21st century music. They make it clear that the transporter wouldn't be precise with its coordinates, so they'll all end up in random spots. 7 materializes in front of a little girl. Oh, okay. Well, they do have these shots of LA. And so, there's some waterfront shots, and there's Rafi. She ends up there. So they all end up in random spots because the transporter not only is inaccurate, but is inaccurate for each and every single pod that every single station that they don't explain why each one will it they say that it can't do the coordinates accurately, but it can't do the coordinates accurately for all spaces. It could, which it would have made more sense if they all materializes in a unknown spot, but they all get transported individually to different places. 7 materializes in front of a little girl who asks if she's a superhero. So she asks if the kid can keep a secret, but I'm sure it won't matter because I'm sure we'll never see her again. And Rios materializes in the middle of the air against a building, so he fell from a great enough height to cause bleeding from his mouth, and then he passes out. And so, of course, the first thing that happens is that someone takes him to what looks like a hospital. And there's a kid that finds Rios's communicator that he drops. And Canadian Spider-Man said, the new Star Trek ships are not pretty. Not at all. Very true, Jill. And hello in the chat to Christian Fandom Geek. And hello to, he says hello to Canadian Spider-Man. And hey, Jill. Hi. And Darius Munchausen says to Canadian Spider-Man, takes a fat rip off a bomb made out of an Enterprise replica. This is some good ship. So Raffi ends up nearby a homeless tent city, and a thug pulls a gun on her, wanting money she doesn't have. Tent cities are definitely a real thing in many parts of California, but I really don't doubt the show's ability in being able to detect depressing current day occurrences. She, of course, easily knocks him out and steals his money in turn. Seven appears, saying she was able to detect Raffi's com badge, but not Rios's. Then Girardi says a whole bunch of really dumb things that are supposedly a window into her subconscious. I don't know why I thought this was going to be some technological dive into reading her subconscious using some sort of device. No, she's just talking. This is why you couldn't use this method on the Borg, because because the Borg is asleep, they can't wake her up. So that's why they explained that earlier, which wasn't clear to me. I made the mistake of giving this episode too much credit, as if they had any imagination for inventing some sort of sci-fi device that could read the subconscious mind. Anyway, here they are trying to make up for season 1 by having Agnes say a lot of nice things about Picard, saying that she admires him and respects him, and she only previously defied his judgment because she really wanted him to be her dad. And I guess they do this to set up for when the Borg Queen accesses her emotions, because everything with Kurtzman is the manipulation of emotions. I didn't see season 3 of STD, but I heard all the dilithium blew up because a Kelpian kid had a tantrum, and in the 4th season of STD, they finally had a story about communicating with an alien species, but it turned out that they communicate with emotions and chemicals. So here they're continuing that theme by transforming the Borg not into a one-track mind of trying to create emotional dore to create. Okay, so here they're transforming the Borg. Now they're not a one-track mind trying to create the ultimate perfection of efficiency and order, like in the original Star Trek, but as masters of emotional doorways like betazoids. So maybe they're going to make the Borg Queen the ship's counselor. And really, I'm just joking, but the way they're going with the Borg is so disturbing. Anyway, the Borg triggers Girardi's anger. So then she flips and starts calling Picard a pretentious prick who fakes his emotions so that he doesn't have to betray his real ones. But how would she even know that kind of thing? This whole thing is nonsense. You can tell someone is trying to help with the writing, but several other people are coming in and throwing in the most ridiculous things like this. Now, the queen enters her sadness. The queen enters her sadness. That doesn't make sense. The queen enters Girardi's sadness department in her brain. That's the best way I could describe it. And I'm wondering, this feels a lot like a Care Bears movie when I keep talking about, centering in on her sadness and her anger. And she's talking about being sad and lonely so much that it's hard for her to carry on, and that she just wants to give into that depression and lie in bed all day. I'm actually translating this because the way they write it is in such a convoluted way. Like they're proud of it. Like this is something honorable instead of something that, you would want to seek help for. The Borg Queen is assimilating Agnes finally, but then things become too intense, and the Borg Queen is nearly perfectly healed. So Picard disconnects her. So somehow, without Borg implants, Agnes is connected to the subspace frequencies of the collective. And I'm not this last part wasn't mentioned in the episode. This is how communication between the Borg are described in canon. It is said in real Star Trek that once you're part of the collective, sudden disconnection could cause death. So I guess in both cases, being able to enter the collective without the original cyborg implants and being able to leave assimilation without damage is just really lucky on part of Girardi. If it's that easy, why did the Borg bother at all with all the wires and surgery and cybernetics when they can just assimilate with one connection cable? So, Canadian Inspired Man says, now you have inspired me to make that happen, Darius. Oh, yes. And Canadian Spider Man says to Christian Fandom Geek, hail and good night to you. And Christian Fandom Geek says, hail to Darius Munchausen. And says that it's early here in the UK and that this wasn't a good episode. And Darius Munchausen points out that it's like Pixar's Inside Out. Yes, good call there. That's what it is. Christian Fandom Geek is laughing. Yeah, that's a good point. So, anyway, Raffi and Seven find the tower where they pretend to be trying to take an anniversary picture. Um, this is that tower. They, they pretend that they're there to take an anniversary picture so that they can get to the top. I'm saying that another security guard let them do that before, and of course that works. But you have no time to care about that because Seven immediately marvels that people are now treating her kindly for, like, apparently the first time ever. Again, the crew of the Voyager want a word with her. Plus, Starfleet are taught to find the inherent worth of dignity in all sentient life, and it's not like she was full Borg. She had been disconnected from the collective for decades now. Maybe the odd one or two weirdos, in Starfleet might have had a hang up about it, but overall, Starfleet officers would have treated her with kindness and respect. So this reaction doesn't make any sense. Rios is then treated for a concussion in a clinic, and he just happens to be lucky enough to not be taken to a hospital because she says she caters to those who don't want to share documentation to be treated. She distracts him by having him talk about the time that he used a flight simulator and beat the scores of all the cadets when he was only 8 years old. And this distraction lets her snap his hand back into place. This is the first scene from the first one at the very, very beginning of the episode, the first 2 minutes, that I like fine just on its own. It's fine. He's in a clinic, he's getting healed, and he realizes that his comm badge is missing. And when we look at the tricorder in this next scene, he fixes his hand. And so we're back on the tower with Rafi and Seven. And we're back on the tower. And she's looking at her tricorder. And the tricorder is funny because to me, she has it open all the way instead of halfway closed like in the other scene. So now it just looks like a smartphone with an overlay. And so they use this tricorder to pick up Rios' signal, and it's coming from that kid who took it. And Thomas Potts in the chat says, Rafi is the worst character this season. And so Rios tries to explain to the kid that stealing is wrong, so the kid counters that his parents are dead. This elicits sympathy from Rios, but then the kid admits he was lying, so Rios asks for the comm badge again. However, now the child counters that you got to give me something, or else you're just stealing. And you just said stealing is bad. It's only logical. So Rios calls him a Vulcan, but the only Vulcan thing that the kid did was saying the words, it's only logical. But that has no meaning because the tactics being used are Ferengi business logic, not Vulcan logic. They're Ferengi business maneuvers, and Quark would have been the one to be proud of this kid, not Spock, who would not appreciate the kid's lying about his parents. Rios should have said, "You're such a Ferengi," because this kid is following the rules of acquisition very well. Oh, and I guess the kid's name is Ricardo. And Christian Fandom Geek says that Raffi is condescending this season, agreeing with Thomas Potts. And Darius Munchausen says, "Great point, Jill. Thank you." And then we cut back to the clinic. Oh, wait. No. Now we're cutting back to the warehouse ship. So the Borg Queen is all better now, saying she got there before the change in the time. In order to get information on the Watcher, she wants legs and she wants to be able to have some voices in her head because she misses all the voices. Uh, um, Instead of that, however, she'll take Picard's ship for now. Oh, and hello in the chat to hello humans. Hello humans. He retracted his message, but I could still read it. Hello there, Jill. Hello. So so yeah, that's what she wants. She wants legs and voices in her head. Yeah, right, because she's just half of herself right now. We just see her top part, but she doesn't have any legs. So we cut back to a clinic where we find out that an immigration raid is coming upon us. But then it goes back to the Borg Queen, where the creators of the show, this is the part of the episode where the creators of the show attack fans who want optimism and hope by saying, okay, so the Borg Queen, she says something like this, or exactly this. I don't know if I copied it down exactly. So she says, "You won't deactivate me because of your deeply flawed inability not to hope in the face of hopelessness." Oh, that has to be verbatim because that sounds so dumb. Okay, as if hope were some kind of weakness. And this is gross. And luckily for the plot, they wrote that Girardi was capable of stealing information from the Borg Queen's memory somehow. So everything she just said doesn't really matter. Don't ask how Girardi did this, please. Don't ask because she just did. They don't explain it. Well, except that, she was assimilated, they were connected. So somehow when the Borg was invading her emotions, Girardi was just like, even though she was being affected by whatever was going on through her speech, she somehow stole the information from the Borg. That's the only explanation we get. Well, at least that is the end of the show. Oh yeah, and that little clinic is being raided by immigration, and Rios is being arrested. So, thankfully, that is all for last week's episode. Unfortunately, another one will be released tomorrow to the detriment of all of Star Trek, but I will continue to review it because they're still hurting Star Trek, and it should be known that not everyone is buying it. And also because Clobby from Clobberin Times just told me he liked my reviews, and so that's good enough for me. If you want to see and enjoy some real Star Trek presented as if we're all at a Star Trek convention, please join us at Saturday Night Star Trek at 9 p.m. Central on Clobberin Times. And I guess here I can also put in the link. So that's the end of my review. And Hello Humans is in the chat. Hey there. And Darius says hello to Hello Humans. And Hello Humans says, "'Tis I, Dane. I removed because I spelled your name wrong." All right. That's all right. Everybody spells my name wrong. Hello Humans. At Darius Munchausen. Hello, my human brother. Darius Munchausen says, "Damn, somebody called ice on Rios." Yeah, that's exactly what happens. Or something. Thomas Potts says, "Episode 4 is already out for me in the US. So now that I finish this, no, I'm not going to watch that right now. I should go to sleep." so so then Thomas Potts says, "No, Darius, they just randomly show up to arrest Hispanics." Yes, that's true. That's exactly what happens. Thomas Potts is correct on that one. And here I wanted to put in Clobberin Times channel because I mentioned him. And also Canadian Spider-Man's channel because he's right here. And so that's Canadian Spider-Man's channel. Oh, wait. Yeah, that is it. And Hello Humans is laughing. I'm glad you're laughing. And there's Spidey's channel. And Darius Munchausen is shaking his head. And here's a link to Captain Marty Spock's channel. And then let me also grab Darius too, right here. Put him in the chat. All right. And then Dade, I don't think do you have a channel or I don't know about that. So I'll get you next time if you do. I don't know that one. And so who else do we have here? We had Darius. Thank you for being here, Darius, and Dade. Thank you for being here, Thomas Potts. And Christian Fandom Geek. Oh yeah, you also have a channel. I think I might have that here. Actually, I did not, but I can grab it. And I will be grabbing that channel here, copying it, and pasting it here, and typing in your name. And Hello Human says, "I cannot stand New Trek." Yes, yeah, that's why I'm here. I can't stand it either. It's just nothing. There was nothing good in this episode, except maybe some of the killing at the beginning of the episode, and that's not in vain with Star Trek. It was just good if it were an action movie. So maybe about a minute of Rios with the Doctor was good too. So about 3 minutes. But it was definitely not a fun time. Oh, and yes, also thank you for I Love Food for being here. And so that's all I had for you guys today. And I will see you guys next time. And the next review I will be having will be for the Orville on Tuesday at noon. And Darius Munchausen says that I'm a rock star. Thank you. And Hello Human says good night. And I'll see you guys later. See you next time.
Red alert. All hands stand to battle stations.
No opportunity. There was no pause. He just kept talking in one long, incredibly unbroken sentence, moving from topic to topic so that no one had a chance to interrupt. It was really quite hypnotic.